Hey, Matt, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. Appreciate it.
It's a real pleasure to finally meet you. So I think our paths should have crossed sometime sooner than this, but it's always helpful for our gang, Matt, to maybe give us a little bit of that short story of your professional journey. It's kind of interesting to hear. How does a journalism major end up doing marketing for Microsoft and the Seattle Mariners and then running Heinz Marketing? How'd you get here?
Well, it's been a giant mistake, Mark. As you would imagine, when you started with a political science and journalism degree, I started my career doing exactly that. I was a state government beat reporter for a suburban newspaper outside of Seattle and
Wow.
made my way to a PR firm, went to Microsoft, ran marketing for a couple of startups in Seattle, and really developed a fondness over time for sort of the complexity of B2B go to market, right? And I realized very quickly, like, you can't just send an email. Like, a lot of the consumer transactional performance marketing tactics don't really apply to complex sales situations.
Right.
So I decided 16 years ago to try it on my own. And so over time, we've built a team. We've got clients kind of all around the world, really helping companies with complex sales situations create more predictable, repeatable pipeline. And it's just been a lot of fun along the way.
And Matt, you're right. It's absolutely spectacular fun doing this.
Mhm.
Today, when you go in and help companies, are you going in as consultants? Are you going in as trainers? What would a typical engagement look like? And how would a company identify they need your help?
Yeah, we're project-based consultants. I think there's a lot of companies that do sort of ongoing retainer agency work for on the tactical campaign side. Most of our clients, have great product market fit, but really don't have a repeatable, scalable engine to drive growth.
Right.
And so we have developed over the years a methodology around building predictable pipeline. So we bring that methodology to clients, we customize it to their unique go-to-market motions, their industry, their culture. We create and install the systems that are going to drive that predictable pipeline. And really, we then teach them how to run it. Like, our big part of our focus is to drive client independence. Our clients want to do this on their own. They want predictable pipeline to be part of their DNA moving forward as a core competency and advantage, competitive advantage in their business. So a lot of people, we get calls from companies that don't have that engine, that have grown maybe organically because of that strong product market fit, but have reached a ceiling and are not growing because they don't have the systems to drive that. We have companies that have sort of outgrown their current marketing functions and are not really reflecting the complexity of how go-to-market works today. We also have clients that, as they grow, their outbound marketing efforts are strong, but their ability to orchestrate that work internally starts to fall apart. Gartner calls that collaboration drag. And it is a
Wow.
real thing as companies get to 20, 25 plus employees on the marketing side. Agility, speed to market starts to really deteriorate unless you put a real focus on how that gets done. So over the last few years, we've developed a real focus and expertise around helping companies better orchestrate the very act of doing marketing and go-to-market work to be more agile, to increase speed to market, to get more of the right work done.
There's so many great things to unpack there, but as you were speaking, Matt, it kind of dawned on me with the 100 or so episodes we've had today. We've had sales thought leaders, coaching thought leaders, mindset
Mhm.
thought leaders, all those kinds of good things. Some folks talking about mental health. It's amazing that I don't think we've had somebody who kind of grew up with this core marketing expertise. We haven't had enough marketing thought leaders.
Mhm.
And in a little while, you and I might end up chatting about this collaboration and integration between sales and marketing.
Oh yeah.
Maybe that's why. Maybe I've been ignoring marketing, but you touched on, hey, organizations that haven't stayed current with what's taking place in marketing.
Yeah.
And frankly, when you start to think of big data, automation, AI, social selling, all these things that continue to evolve over the last quantum computing over the last kind of 7 or 8 years, it's tough to stay current.
Yeah.
If we took it from base principles today, and this might be an overly simplified question, but what is the role of marketing in the typical mid-sized organization? A SaaS company's got 25 million in ARR, and they've got a marketing team of 15 people.
Yeah. It's a really good question. And I think a lot of people would say, well, it's to drive demand, right? Which manifests in leads. But I think that's too narrow. I think even in a small growing organization, I think marketing's function is to manage product market fit, to
Hmm.
manage how well your
Wow.
developing product strategy meets and matches what the market needs. I think a great marketing leader needs to know more about the customer than anybody in the organization and develop a go-to-market plan that reflects that.
Hmm.
Sales teams say they want leads, and they do need leads, but what the sales team really needs is a market that needs what they're selling. They need a market that's receptive to their message, that knows who your company is, but more importantly, understands why they need the conversation. They understand the problem. They understand what's wrong in their current situation, and they're seeking solutions to make that better, to achieve a better outcome. Like that to me, and that is fluid, right? As your product evolves, as the market evolves, as capabilities evolve, I think that's fluid. And so I think a marketing leader's job to manage product market fit and drive market demand and all the manifestations of what that looks like is key to success, short term and long term.
What an interesting approach, by the way. Because a lot of times you see these silos between we've got product over here, we've got marketing.
Right.
Usually there's pretty good integration between marketing and sales, but you'll hear a lot of sell what you've got on the truck,
Mhm.
right? Just sell what you've got on the truck
Yeah.
instead of having that closed loop. We're saying, hey, sales is in front of clients, marketing's in front of clients. We're understanding what the client needs. What's that process for feeding it back into the
Right.
product group so we help with that core sort of value proposition to the market. Tell me a little bit about Matt, if some of the folks listening today, that by the way, that's a real big one on this product market fit.
Mhm.
When CEOs are listening to this today and they start to think about their marketing efforts,
Yep.
what's a basic framework that they can think of in terms of outside of product market fit?
Mhm.
What should I be doing to try and help create turn a lead into an opportunity or turn an opportunity into a sale?
Yep.
How do we think about how marketing supports that effort?
So I would start with a very simple 2x2 matrix
Hmm.
that on one side says brand and demand, and on the other side says short term and long term. And I
Okay.
think there are short term and long term things you can do to build a strong brand and build and drive repeatable, predictable demand. And I bring that up because in a couple of reasons. One, I think a lot of companies that are thinking short term prioritize demand over brand. And I get it. You need leads, and they're like, well, brand's expensive. It's like, not necessarily. Like you and I are doing this podcast, and I know later today we're recording one on Sales Pipeline Radio, our podcast. And except for a couple streaming services and our time, this is free, right?
Right.
Used to be you had to get a publisher to publish your book. Now you can do it through Lulu and other. So building a brand is more about your ability to be creative and be proactive at doing it. And I don't know any strong, predictable, sustainable demand programs that operate with efficiency that aren't supported by a strong brand behind it. So they have to go together. But your short-term and long-term strategies may differ. You have
Hmm.
to invest now in the things you want to impact your business long-term, but you also have to invest and prioritize now the things that are going to drive pipeline this quarter.
Yes.
So brand demand, short, long term, and have an approach and a strategy in each of those. Revisit it on a regular basis. This is a quarterly conversation to decide what's working, what's not working, what's having an impact, what are we ready for next?
And when you start to think of that, it feels to me like the marketing professional today has to be sort of part data scientist, part visionary, part, creative designer. What are
Yeah.
the skills and attributes, even of the members of your team, when you're looking at somebody and say, listen, they're a right fit for our team. We'll
Mhm.
park values for a second. So
Yeah.
the who they are, but
Yeah.
what do you look for when you're looking for marketing executives today? What kind of skills and capabilities?
I think I don't want to say researcher because that feels too narrow, but I think fundamentally all of this begins with a deep and ongoing understanding of who your customer is. And let me
Yeah.
define that in a couple of different ways. One, you need to as part of product market fit, you need to understand the subset of your market that you're actually selling to, right?
Hmm.
Saying you sell into mid-market healthcare is way too broad.
Yeah.
By narrowing your focus, you are not excluding those other companies from buying from you. That you'll still take their money. But what you're doing is emphasizing and prioritizing a subset of the market that, based on a variety of attributes, is most likely to buy, is most likely to have the need for what you're selling. And because buildings don't write checks, Mark, we got to talk about the people in the building, right?
Right.
And we can no longer just count on. I remember, you probably read the book Selling the Veto, right? It's back here somewhere. The very important
Back in
top
the day, I
officer.
did. Yeah.
Yeah, very important top officer, still important, but not sufficient. And so there's this concept of the buying committee, and they would never describe, very rarely, if ever, would they describe themselves as the buying committee. But there's a group of people in every company that have a vested interest in the outcome that work together to build consensus, sometimes formally, sometimes organically. Our job as sellers is to get that buying committee to commit to change and commit to that to the point where they actually choose and implement a solution. Like, that's it, right? But it's like, that's really hard. Like, you think, let's imagine there's 5 members of the buying committee. 4 of them have said yes, but one's a soft no. Deal's dead, right? And so our ability to orchestrate consensus and movement inside that buying committee is the core of the job for sales and marketing teams. And so, back to your question, the better I understand motivations, the better I understand needs, the better I understand not just intent, but needs and evidence of needs and how those correlate to a message I should get in front of someone to help them better understand, to unlock, to challenge. We talk about Brent Adams, to challenge and reframe a status quo. Like, that's it, right? And so that manifests itself in messages, in campaigns, in sales playbooks, in what you say at the trade show. But it all comes from that buying journey understanding.
I really like that idea. And I've heard you on other podcasts while I was prepping for today. You talk about kind of mapping the buyer journey out and making sure that you're adding value and insight and knowledge, whether it's through collaterals or a point of view or third-party research, to somebody at every stage along that buyer's journey, which I think is magnificent. The stuff on the consensus, a friend of the show is Alice Hyman. So Miller Hyman, from back in the day when probably both of us had beautiful heads of hair. It still hasn't changed, right?
Yeah.
There were groups of people buying back in 1987 or 89, whenever it was.
Yep.
They had personal needs, they had professional needs. You had to make sure how you navigated that. I still love that framework. They've sold the company twice. It's now Korn Ferry. I think the brand's disappearing, unfortunately, but love that framework for doing so. Understanding the buyer, how can that be a mistake? Understanding, having the business acumen, the industry acumen, have a point of view in terms of a better future for them. How can you help them? How can that be a mistake?
Well, yes. And there's an awful lot of companies that talk about themselves and don't talk about the customer needs. There's an awful lot of founders out there that say, I don't need to research the customer. I founded this company based on my understanding, so I know what they need to hear. There's a lot of companies that are so enamored with their product and assume that the buyer is going to do the value translation on their own, that we're just going to throw a bunch of features and product conversations at people and trust that they're going to understand what that means, right? There is no build it and they will come. Even if you have great product market fit, you still have to think about that narrative. You still have to connect the dots for the customer to be not only more efficient, but just more predictable and scalable.
And so I've heard you on podcasts. You're a super positive guy, Matt. I'm a super positive person too, but I got to ask this question.
Yeah.
That concept you just shared, making it about them, was actually, there's nothing new. Dale Carnegie in 1939 said, you can make more friends in 2 months by taking an interest in them than you can in 2 years by trying to get them interested in you.
Right.
Why are we still struggling with this in professional B2B sales and marketing in 2024? It just doesn't make any sense to me why we still have to go through this.
I think when it comes down to, at the end of the day, like, we just don't want to take the time.
Okay.
And you look at examples of what happens out there today. Let's take the proverbial white paper, right?
Sure.
Let's say you create a white paper that actually is written with some insights for the customer that helps them address and understand a need and a problem, right? And so you get someone that actually downloads that white paper. What we typically do is have a 23-year-old call them and just say, thanks for downloading the white paper. Can I schedule you into a demo?
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly right.
I'm not even being facetious. Like, this happens all the time, every day. And so we assume that because they have asked for the white paper, let alone read it, that they're ready for a demo. Because what do we want as sellers? We want meetings. What do we want to do in those meetings? We want to talk about our product. We want to show them all these great things we can do. And once they see it, just give me 15 minutes, sir, and I will show you how I'm going to do X, Y, Z, right? Instead of saying, would you like the demo? What if instead you said, thanks for downloading the white paper. Of course you haven't read it yet. But like,
Mhm.
why did you do that? What's
Yeah.
going on in your business right now? Like, why was the topic of that white paper prescient to you right now? Maybe they have an answer for that. Maybe they don't. And if they do, great, you go down that line, maybe if that helps you. Otherwise, say, listen, I get a chance to talk to people in your seat all day long. And when I ask them what is frustrating them in their business right now, I hear the same three things. List those three things quickly and then say, like, which of those made you a little sweaty thinking about it
Right.
because that is something you're dealing with right now? Or
Yeah.
maybe even better, what's one of the things on that list that you weren't thinking about? But now that you know all of your peers are losing sleep on it, would you like to know why?
Yeah.
So there's an insight there, and you can absolutely teach a 23-year-old how to have this conversation. You don't have to be a grizzled sales rep. You don't have to be a deep product expert. But to know how to ask questions and get the prospect thinking and aligning behind something that they've clearly shown interest in the next step, you are not doing a demo, but your chances of earning the demo after that conversation go up dramatically. Sometimes 3 steps is faster than one, but I think back to your original question, I think a lot of sellers, a lot of companies don't have the patience and discipline to do that.
Well, I think it's such a great point. It's harder to teach somebody business acumen and industry acumen and effective discovery than it is just to say, let our product do the talking for itself.
Right.
But to me or to you, frankly, that's a nightmare scenario. Can you
Mhm.
imagine, hey, I'm going to jump on as a salesperson, I'm going to jump on a call
Yep.
because we scheduled a demo. Everybody out there has faced this. The person who scheduled the demo is not the person on the other end of the Zoom call. There's 6 people.
Yeah.
They're all staring at you bold faced. I have no idea who they are. I don't know
Yep.
why they're on the call. 3 of them have no reason being on the call. They're
Yeah.
not going to influence the decision anyway.
Yeah.
And suddenly they go, dance like a monkey.
Yeah.
And so for
Yeah.
those listening, to the best thing you can do is say, hey, great to meet everybody here today. We'll take you through a demonstration if that's what you like at the end of this thing.
Yeah.
But first, can I just start? Can you go around the room? Let me know who you are. What are you
Yeah.
doing here? Why was
Why
this
are
of
you here?
interest to you? You
Don't you have
know,
something better to do? Why did you choose to come here instead of the thousand other things you could
that's
be doing?
right.
What were you hoping to hear? What were
Right.
you hoping to learn? What did you want to get out of this conversation that you thought going in might be the reason why you're here as opposed to something else? Let's have that
Yes.
conversation first. And honestly, if you do that, and like even if you so like forget the demo, like forget the demo, like
Completely.
forget the
Exactly.
capabilities presentation. If you can confirm and deepen the need and understanding of need with that audience, they will blow through the end of the meeting and stick around. They will enthusiastically take the next meeting to see how do you understand them so well? What could you possibly have built based on that
Yeah.
understanding that's now going to fulfill promises made, promises kept, right?
Yeah, just great stuff. So if we switch gears, so at this point in time of the sales getting an opportunity,
Yeah.
we think on this podcast we've had lots of great conversations about that. I think we're probably, we've got some frameworks and thoughts that are helpful. If we go a little bit upstream,
Yeah.
in this day and age, how do we, and let's say we do actually understand our buyer and the problem our solution solves for, or what's going on in their business and their industry, and we have
Yeah.
this point of view and some value. How do we actually get attention and interest in this day and age where 45% of what's in my inbox today is spam?
Yeah. Yeah. It is not easy. It isn't done quickly. You are not starting from zero. You're starting from a negative position because of what everyone else is doing to
Yeah, right.
disrupt and
Yeah, right.
ignore and disrespect the time of your
Nice.
prospects. So, our efforts to get someone's attention, our sales and marketing outbounds, our blog posts, our podcasts, our sales emails, this is driving by your prospect's house at 35 miles an hour trying to get something in the mailbox, right?
Right.
You're going to miss a lot. So when you do get something in there, I don't know about you, but literally like the other day, my wife and I are sitting, this is relevant to this, I promise. My wife and I are sitting out on the porch and we asked our youngest son, like, hey, will you go down and get the mail? Brought the mail to my wife. She literally sat there and without even opening anything, like took 80% of it and gave it right back to him without a word. And he just put it in the recycle bin.
Yes. Yeah.
It was just sales stuff. It was just irrelevant, not something we want to spend time with, just didn't even make it in the house, right?
Yes.
So know that if you have a great message that is relevant to that audience, you're probably going to end up in the recycle bin initially. And to follow my mailbox analogy a little further, eventually, maybe they look at something, you're like, that was interesting. That didn't waste my time. They didn't spend a lot of time on it, but that didn't waste my time. The next time they see something from you, that sparks interest as well. Eventually, they start recognizing that car that drives by their house, throwing something in the mailbox. They're like, ooh, I should check what that is. Now, I don't mean that in a stalker way, but I'm trying to say, like, you are competing with a massive amount of information from everybody else. Yeah. And over time, by being consistently valuable, you earn the right for someone to say, I'm going to keep this piece of mail. Yeah. Or, you know what, I don't have time right now to read it, but I know there's usually value here. I'm going to put it on my list and get to it eventually. And that is a process. It is not a single email. I see people all the time. I bought a list. I send them an email. I got no response. Apparently email's dead. It's like, no, man, your prospects are just inundated. They don't know you. They don't trust you. That is a process. And look, I mean, I run a business. I got to close deals. I wish I could call CMOs and sort of close consulting projects more quickly. It doesn't work that way. And so again, back to my matrix of brand and demand, short-term, long-term, there are tactics, there are priorities you can put in place. If you want your prospect to read all of your mail, you have to prove that your mail is worth reading.
So good. And by the way, we learned a lot of this the hard way. I'll say same thing, same thing for us. Matt, you've been in business longer. I think you started 2006, 2007, right?
2008. Yeah. So we're coming up on 16 years.
Oh,
yeah.
2008. Nice timing.
Thank you. It was November of 2008, by the way.
Oh my goodness. So like
tough. The market had just, no, it gets better. The market had just crashed. My wife's finally pregnant with our first child.
Oh my goodness.
And so why not quit your job? You don't need benefits when your wife's pregnant. So yeah, it was, and now it sounds worse than it was. Like my wife's a teacher. Her benefits are way better than mine ever were. I had a couple clients lined up. It wasn't as bad as it sounds, but yeah, it was a time.
Actually, there's a great conversation for another podcast about entrepreneurship.
Oh my
right?
God!
So we both lived through that. But when we just going back to this, getting this time and attention, we lived through there was a period of time where I literally outsourced our content on LinkedIn or Facebook, our social posts.
Yeah.
And in the early days of our business, 10 years ago, 12 years ago, we had marketing interns. And they, every once in a while I'd read something and go, I would never say that. They were trying to interpret, we gave them an impossible task.
Right.
The truth of it is now we actually write it. Now we've got a GPT, an AI tool that helps us and starts to get to know us a little bit, so it starts to get better and better and better. But I'm completely with you. Anything that's got our name or brand on it, it has to be adding value, because the number of people who come to us and say, I've been following you for 2 years on LinkedIn, and you go, wow, it worked, but it was slow, but it actually worked.
Yeah.
So making sure you're consistent with the brand.
Yeah.
I've heard you talk about this and you've written about this a little bit, Matt, but tell me a little bit about some of the best practices for the sales leaders out there listening. We have far more sales leaders listening today than we do have marketing leaders. What can they do to improve the collaboration or bring some best practices to the table by working with their marketing teammates?
That's a great question. I think first is to know and appreciate that it is a team sport, that you can't do this if you don't do it together. There is no successful marketing without sales. There is no successful sales without marketing. Just full stop. I think also to recognize that the old way of thinking about the pipeline, where marketing owns the top and sales owns the bottom, is insufficient in most modern B2B selling environments. Instead of splitting the funnel horizontally, we need to be splitting it vertically, maybe with a diagonal bend, where marketing
Tell
has
us
the
about
most of the
that.
jobs at the top, sales may have most of the jobs at the bottom. But I really am thinking more about jobs to be done. Like one of the best ways of sort of examples of this is the BDR, the business development function, sort of that lead
Yeah.
management, taking the leads and turning them, qualifying them. Okay, does it sit in sales? Does it sit in marketing? I don't care. But what is the job to be done? In
Mm.
some cases, it's better if it sits in sales because your BDRs are future AEs because they feel like they're part of the sales culture. But in some cases, that means they get the thanks for downloading the white paper. Would you like to see a demo? Right.
Hmm.
Sometimes it's better if they're in marketing, if marketing is responsible not for leads, but opportunity creation. So if you
Nice.
think about it in marketing, now all of a sudden I'm saying, well, I got a group of people that are on the phone. The phone is just another channel, just like the LinkedIn, just like email, just like podcasts, just like trade shows. And so what's the conversation I want someone to have when I can get them on the phone that further qualifies and drives interest with the right person at the right company? And now it's worth an AE spending time on. So again, like it's the same process, and I really don't care who does it. And so
Hmm.
I think the lines are appropriately blurred between sales and marketing and what is that sort of messy middle.
Yeah.
And I think if you can take ego aside, if you can know that some of the metrics we look at are leading indicators and or ingredients to the end results. And also this, I mean, thinking a lot about just sort of like when a deal gets closed and like
Hmm.
someone makes their quota and someone goes to President's Club. Like increasingly, I have clients talking about like who gets to go to President's Club? Is it just
Right.
the AE that closed the deal? What about the BDRs that did the follow up for months? What about the marketing team that built the product market fit that
Right.
made them interested? What about the copywriter who wrote such compelling copy based on a deep understanding of that audience? So I think it's increasingly becoming insufficient to just have the AE close a deal, go to President's Club. So I there's a whole that's a whole nother podcast as well. So when we got an entrepreneurship podcast and we got a President's Club podcast we got to work on here. But I think the healthiest, most successful programs to drive demand and sales are when sales and marketing work closely together. They
Yeah.
check egos at the door. They have an integrated scorecard, and they know that everybody wins or everybody loses. And the metrics that matter are the numbers that you can buy a beer with. Period.
Yeah. Money in the door. Money
Yep.
in the door. And so, by the way, when you start to think of this team sport,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's critically important today because you probably know all the metrics as well, but the tenures of these sales leaders so short. Frankly, tenure of anybody in sales
Mm-hmm.
insanely short. But a sales leader is like 18 months these days.
Yeah.
BDR, SDR, same thing, about 18 months, a little bit less. So this idea of saying if I'm a CRO, as I've been in the past, if I'm going to jump into somebody's organization today, I'm looking
Yeah.
to build as many people closely in the team and link arms with the team because I actually believe in collaboration. I
Yeah.
believe in the power of the team. And by the way, it's also a survival mechanism.
Correct.
If we don't have a team around us, we're going to have a short stint. This 18 months is just insane.
Yep.
But let's look at positive things. So if we turn the table a little bit and say, hey, a lot of challenges out there getting attention and awareness, but I don't think we've ever been at this stage of the world where we're so well enabled. Big data,
Mm-hmm.
quantum computing,
Mm-hmm.
AI,
Mm-hmm.
automation technology, the
Yeah.
ability to get more productive and effective.
Yeah.
I love those tools that, help do a little research for me before I'm going to speak to Matt Heinz.
Yeah.
I can get a disc profile on Matt Heinz pretty quickly. What kind of
Yep.
person is he? And how does that compare with me? And, analyzing your digital footprint out there so that we can have a more engaging conversation. What are you really excited about now when we start to think of the next couple of years in marketing?
Yeah, what I'm excited about is kind of flipping that, where instead of using all the tools to research you before I make the call, I use the data to figure out who to call first.
Mm,
So, based on my understanding of the target audience, my understanding of the ideal customer profile account, my understanding of the individual I need to be speaking to, that's a model that inherently includes an understanding and prioritization of data. And the level of data we now have access to through a variety of means is incredible. It's kind of like
Mm.
it's kind of like the Library of Congress, every book ever produced, but they're all on the floor, right? So like, where do you find the books you need? And I think the better you understand your audience, the better you can prioritize the data you need and use that data to decide, who do I call next? And
Yeah.
what do I talk about?
Great.
Yeah. And I think about, I mean, you hear this phrase intent signals a lot these days. A lot of the big data companies, a lot of the database vendors, a lot of them are sort of producing what they're broadly calling intent signals. But I'd break it down even further. I think intent signal to me means you've got someone that is indicating interest in your product or is showing evidence that they are seeking a solution.
Yes.
Phenomenal, right? This is a later stage buyer that hopefully you've built some brand and some credibility with, so you're not a commodity at the last part, column fodder at the end of the deal. But that's great. Behind intent signals are need signals. It's prospects and customers that are researching or exhibiting needs that relate to your solution. You're still not going to offer a 15-minute demo, but hey, you can respond to that need by giving them educational content, by teaching them what other people like them are doing with that need. So the middle one is the need, but before need is evidence signals, evidence of need that your prospect hasn't translated into a need, right? They're on this journey maybe for the first time. You've seen the movie countless times, but you know that oftentimes evidence of need is a way to accelerate that path from evidence to need to commitment to change. And if you are the trusted advisor that helps them on that path, you're the incumbent in the deal now, right?
Yeah.
Now that evidence signals and need signals, these are early in the buying process. These are not sales qualified leads yet. These are not people that should be in your immediate pipeline.
Yes.
But your ability as a marketing organization, as a selling organization, to identify and engage with prospects at that stage with the right channels, right? To make sure that it's not like a bunch of people on the phone. It's not, the economics of that has to be light. But knowing you can break up the data into those three areas and respond accordingly is helping
Love
a lot of
it.
companies brand and demand with that long-term play.
Well, love it. I mean, in simplest terms, but I just completely love this, by the way. So I think everybody out there is using Zoom for intent, intent data, or
Yeah.
cheap and cheerful versions of Zoom for intent data, lots of different technologies. But boy, oh boy, there's a certain size of, for example, a software company. How long have they been in existence? Who's on their executive team? What's the
Yeah.
solution? Who are they selling into? I could tell you with certainty, just getting those attributes, 80% of the time, they're growing less than 10%,
Yeah.
right? They came out of the gate. And so they need what we would actually sell, which would be sales training and development for their team to elevate performance.
Mhm.
So I love this idea of getting smart in this space, in that area, because this world is so broad. Now, I know you get a chance with your podcasts and your blogs and your writing, and you're a guest on everybody else's podcast. How do you stay current in this very, very confusing world these days, Matt? So
Yeah.
feels like that sales leader or marketing person's, got this chameleon type role where it's just so hard to stay current with everything. What are
Yeah.
the sources you go to, or how do you stay abreast of what's going on?
Um, so a couple things. The easiest answer is you have to prioritize constant learning. You have to be a constant student of things you need to know and things you're just interested in, where your brain will make correlations. I mean, I think some of my best insights into sort of how we could be a better business, how we can better serve clients, have come from like other industries and random other situations where I'm like, what just happened there could happen with us too. What just happened there could be part of a sales
Yeah.
process, right?
Yeah.
I buy too many books. And so like I haven't
I
read
see
every
them.
one of these cover to cover, right? But I'm reading way more because I make it a priority. And honestly, like as a marketing person for most of my career, like the marketing stuff I get, I read a lot more sales books than marketing books, right? Because it's an area that I did not grow up in and have like until I started this business, I didn't carry a bag. I hadn't been a seller like the last
Mm,
16 years, 100% a seller. So I think just to be hungry, to be interested, to make it a habit. And there's so many different formats, right? I mean, if you don't like reading, like watch videos. If you don't like videos, like download a bunch of podcasts and listen to them in the car, listen to them when you go for a run, listen and put them on in the background when you're doing something else easy. Oh, but Matt,
yeah.
I'm not actively listening to it. Not the point. You've got information that you are consuming,
Yeah.
subconsciously, even if you're sort of working on some other tactical, easy thing. So I really do think like there's no simple answer other than you got to put in the time and make it a habit.
You almost led there too, by the way. Thank you for that. You almost led to Lencioni's humble, hungry, smart kind of thing, in terms of what you're looking for in terms of top people and great thought leaders. And that is, in all 100 podcasts, we ask this question, frequently. And it does come back being the lifelong learner. Instead of a know-it-all, be a learn-it-all. The most successful people in the world have driven that appetite to keep learning, be prepared, be ready to go. The best athletes in the world are always looking to tweak, 2%, 3% to get tiny bit better because it has an absolutely massive impact. So just given your time, I'm gonna maybe wrap up a couple of things here, Matt. And first of all, by saying thank you for joining today.
Of course.
I'm sure so many of the folks listening to this podcast are going to get enormous value from what we've heard today, but this will be the start of the process of them getting to know you. Where should they go to learn more? And we're going to have links to your books on Amazon, and we're going to have links to your website, but where should they go to learn more about you?
HeinzMarketing.com, it's our company's website. You can learn about what we do, but click on the resource section, and it's 16 years of blog posts, best practice guides. We do a ton of research in go-to-market motions, and a lot of that's up there as well. It's all free. Most of it doesn't have a form. It's just take it and use it and benefit from it. You're going to be a guest shortly on our podcast as well, Sales Pipeline Radio. We named it that years ago on purpose. We are marketing consultants, but the output of this is Sales Pipeline. So that's what that is about. And so check that out. And I write a lot on LinkedIn these days. I used to write every day on our blog, and now our company blog is written by our consultants, and it's so much better. Our blog, I can brag about it because I have nothing to do with it. But I spend a lot more time on our podcast and on LinkedIn. So you can check me out on LinkedIn as well. Or just if you don't find what you want or just want a shortcut to the librarian, just Matt@HeinzMarketing.com. And I welcome anybody who's curious and has any questions.
We didn't even get into curiosity today, but that's such a great topic. So first of all, thanks, Matt. So thanks again for joining. And team, all of those links will be in the show notes for the podcast today. I'll tell everybody that in preparation for today, I did go and check out the white papers, the resource section. There are a ton of extremely well-written white papers. So they're clear, they're good looking, core messages you can pull from. I took a look at a CMO's guide to marketing orchestration and from data to deals before we got in. Just downloaded and read 2 of them. I learned things. So teams, you will too. Please jump on to the website and download those things. Well, thank Matt so much for today. And team, I just want to say thank you to you for listening. So as everybody knows, we run this podcast because at a high level, we want to improve the performance and professionalism of B2B sales. But in doing so, we actually think we improve the lives of professional salespeople. So thanks for listening today. We're growth oriented, and we know we're not perfect at doing this. So if you've got some constructive criticism or some thoughts as to how we can make the Selling Well podcast more valuable to you, I want to know about them. And I'm Mark Cox at inthefunnel.com, MarkCox at inthefunnel.com. In fact, some of the things we do on the podcast came as a result of great feedback you gave us. So keep it coming. That's my personal email. I respond to your notes, and we respond to everybody who gives us an idea. Thanks for listening, team. If you enjoyed today, please tell your friends and like and subscribe to the Selling Well podcast, because that's how we actually get great guests like Matt Heinz. And we'll see you next time on the Selling Well.